I don't like it. What we have here today is the Carl Zeiss Jena Flektogon 35mm f2.8, or commonly known as the Flek. Part of what makes the Flek so interesting is its contribution to the history of photography. The Flek, as well as the Ingenue retrofocus, were the first two lenses to actually be wider than 40mm on a traditional SLR camera. Before these two lenses, there were no wide-angle lenses for SLR cameras, and the two of them have greatly impacted even current modern designs for wide-angle lenses. The Flek began production in 1950, and it ran all the way up to 1990 in multiple different iterations. There were 4 different versions of the f2.8, as well as a redesign in 1976 to a multi-coated f2.4 version. Now, we're not going to deep dive into the history of this lens because we will be here for a long time if we do. But in the description below, I have included a link to an article on casualphotophile.com written by Cheyenne Morrison that covers this in depth. It's a fantastic article, and it helped me to understand the history of this lens even more. Now, I will note, there is a fun little conspiracy about this lens.
Yeah, I gotta dig a little deeper.
When you look at the listings and the descriptions of this lens, it is listed as a 62-degree angle of view. But a 35mm lens is supposed to be a 65-degree angle of view. That's right, folks. This lens lies.
Liar!
It is not a 35mm as it says on its faceplate. It is, in fact, a 37mm. Yeah, fun fact. Alright, but that's enough of sitting here talking. Let's go shoot with this lens. Alright guys, so we're out today shooting with the... Oh my gosh, yeah, no, none of that, none of that. That waterfall audio, that is just way too loud. So the ergonomics of using the Flek are actually rather enjoyable. The lens has a really long focus throw, which is useful for nailing that critical focus. It has a completely declicked aperture that you actually have to like press in to use. So it allows kind of a locking mechanism, so you can't just bump it and accidentally adjust it, but it is declicked to the full stops. It also has an aperture lock mechanism that you can set to just make sure that you can't inadvertently bump it or change it without releasing that lock. While I enjoy the ergonomics of using this lens, I find myself not being a fan of this lens. Now, some of that could be my particular copy, could be a little bit rough, because I do know that the Flek is pretty popular and well known amongst a lot of different users, although I find that most people prefer the Zebra, the 3rd iteration. Why I'm not a fan is this does not really fit to my style of photography. The center of the lens is pretty sharp, but then it falls off very quickly on the sides with a sharpness fall off, and it kind of gets blurry, almost like there's a depth of field issue. Now that could be interesting because it does kind of create, leading lines that pull you into the center and does kind of create a pseudo kind of anamorphic look where it just kind of really pushes you to the center sharpness. But that also leads to its very low color contrast. It is not very good at capturing color images. It tends to be very muted and very flat. Now mind you, you can adjust all of that in the grade and you can make it kind of pop in color, but it's a lot of extra work. This lens was manufactured for black and white photography, and honestly it shows. This lens does excel in black and white. I shoot an image in color and convert it to black and white, it looks better. It has better contrast, it does a better job of capturing the gray tones. Where the colors look very muted, it translates very well to black and white. As an example, here is a video shot straight out of camera. Then here it is with a color grade, which again doesn't look bad, but you lose some highlight detail. And then here is that same shot in black and white. So that same shot in black and white does end up looking better. I do find that this lens just is really strong for black and white photography. I also discovered through using it though that this lens also excels
at nighttime street photography. So I used this lens a bunch locally. I also took it with me up on a brief trip to Boston and did a lot of night photography with this lens. Using this lens, the still images and the video impressed me when it came to nighttime street photography. I was able to capture a very dramatic, kind of dynamic images, especially of like neon signs. It just did a fantastic job of those kinds of scenarios. Yes, there was more work that needed to be done in post-production because the color rendition of this lens is not the best. But overall, I was very impressed with how it handles nighttime street photography. Alright, so some final thoughts. While I'm very impressed with what this lens has done for photography and the history of photography and lens design, I'm not a fan. I would not find myself reaching for this lens to use on a regular basis. It does have strengths. It's good at black and white photography, good at nighttime street photography. The ergonomics are very nice to work with, but it just doesn't fit my style of photography. There's not a lot of contrast to the image, the colors are very muted and dull, and it has that horrific sharpness fall off towards the edges that makes it very much a center composition lens. Now that said, I do respect it could be my copy, it could be my variant, there might be a lot of difference and variation because I know this lens has a lot of popularity and a lot of supporters out there. I just find it doesn't fit what I like to do. Alright guys, well with that we're going to wrap it up. I hope you found this video entertaining. If you guys want to learn more about the history of this lens, I will link that blog post in the description below. It's a very cool lens for the history of photography and what it did. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and we will see you in the next video. Peace out. Bye.